every Hmong kid's worst nightmares started at these apartments in Sacramento, California. This apartment was full of Asians and mostly Hmong that were just coming to America in the early 1990s. The apartment used to be blue and had little taste in looks. It was old, and people called it the ghetto. Now it's been remodeled, and I don't know if there are still Hmong people living there. When I was a kid during the 90s, I had a lot of cousins living there at Greystones. Almost every weekend, there were jingle bells there. As kids, you made friends with all the other kids, even if you didn't live at the apartments too. Well, the ghost and superstitious part of the story I'm going to tell you are just rumors, but the event of murder case is real. At Greystones, like average Hmong kids, kids there would often play hide-and-go-seek, cops and robbers, or tag. One day, a group of kids were playing tag. There was this tall, dead grass meadow. The other side of the apartments were separated by the apartment's black fence. On the other side of the meadow are some ghetto duplexes and houses. Some of the kids that were part of the tag game decided to hide in that meadow. The meadow had some unwanted junk there by people loitering. Two kids decided that they were going to hide in a pile of junk that consisted of some old furniture. There were two old couches over one another. When the kids got there, they thought of hiding in between it. As they were trying to get in, one of the kids noticed someone already lying in there. The kids were grown up enough to know what it was, so they freaked out and ran to tell the other kids. More kids came to check it out, and since there were some older kids there, they decided to lift off the top couch and check out what was under there. The younger ones stood by watching. When they moved it, it revealed a dead corpse. I don't recall how old it was, but it was a dead corpse of a white lady. The news got to one another, and eventually police showed up to the site. The girl was assaulted, murdered, and disposed there. Soon after, creepy things started to happen around the apartments. Kids running back into the meadow from games would see a white lady in jeans and a white tank top searching through the junk laying around. When she spotted the kids that were looking at her, she would freak out and eventually run to hide at the furniture that was at the same spot the corpse was found. People coming home late at night would notice that there was a white lady wandering around the apartment's parking lot, sometimes crying. One night, a family in the apartments were having a movie night. The mom and dad were pretty young and had 3 little children. The youngest one started to cry a lot. The mom tried to calm the baby down, but it would still keep on crying. The mom then gave the baby to the dad while she went to make a bottle. The father tried to calm the baby down. Then he noticed that the baby kept on staring the other way towards the living room window and then crying again. So this time, he decided to look as well. When he looked, he saw a lady standing outside the window. He freaked out and grabbed his children and told the wife to go to bed now, not telling the wife what he saw. In the middle of the night, someone began knocking on their door. The mom told the dad to go get it, but he kept insisting not to. The mom was getting irritated and told the husband that if he doesn't do it, then she would. He told her to just ignore it and that he'll tell her in the morning why. The wife picked up on his hint and understood. She got scared and went to sleep. The next morning, he explained to his wife what he saw at the window. The thing was that their apartment is on the 2nd floor, and on the 2nd floor, the living room window had no patio on the outside. It was just a straight drop down, since the patio only goes and stops at the door. At Greystones, sometimes there is also security that drives through for their rounds. There was a Hmong guy working his first night as a security. One of his rounds was at Greystones. It was very late at night and everybody was in bed. The security did his round driving through. Since he finished a little quick, he decided to park his car and just rest a little bit. As he rested, someone knocked on his window. He looked and it was a white lady. she started saying stuff. As for him, his English was not too good since he was one of those who barely just got into the States. He stopped her and grabbed his phone or radio to call for an interpreter to get there. He let the lady sit inside the back seat as they waited and as he stood outside. When the other security got there, they walked over to his car. Upon opening the back seat, it was empty. No one was sitting there. The Hmong guy got really confused. He swore up and down that there was a lady sitting there. Eventually, the other security guard left. As the Hmong security guard thought everything through, he realized that there couldn't be anyone here at this late hour. The very next day, he quit his job. I was once married to a Hmong guy in Sacramento, California. We usually go to bed together. However, this one night, I couldn't fall asleep, so he passed out first. Finally, it was around 1 to 2 a.m., so I decided to hit the sack. I turned on the little nightlight in our bedroom, then crawled into bed and cuddled next to him. Both of his arms were around my waist, holding me while I held his hands. 10 to 15 minutes passed and I couldn't fall asleep. While laying next to my husband, I was thinking about what I will do tomorrow. Going to my mom and dad's house or the AA supermarket. Then, I heard a shuffling noise, like something scratching. As I listened carefully, it sounded like it was coming from under the bed. Yeah, it did freak me out a little bit, but I just thought that maybe it was a mouse or something, and since it was during the middle of the night, I didn't want to make a big fuss out of it and wake my in-laws up. The noise stopped for a few seconds. Then there it was, the noise again. Except this time, it felt wrong. Our room suddenly became cold. It really freaked me out, but I just laid still and tried not to move, thinking that maybe it was just all in my head. Suddenly, something was moving from under my pillow. At that point, I reached under my pillow with one of my hands. I got a bit irritated. It was then that I felt a cold hand, and it moved. Now, this couldn't be my husband's hands because both of his arms were still around my waist. It happened so fast that before I could even think if it was actually a hand, it grabbed my hair and pulled it. It pulled my hair under the bed from under the pillow. At that point, I just lost it and screamed. I knew it was a hand because while I reached under the pillow, I grabbed the hand, the wrist to be precise, and felt the fingers moving really fast as it grabbed my hair. This freaked out my husband, so he jumped up from his sleep. By then, the thing already had let go, and I could hear the hand pulling back under the bed quickly. I told them that something pulled my hair from under the bed, and I sobbed. Of course, nothing was under the bed as we looked, but I did wake up my in-laws with my scream. When I told them what happened, they said that I might have just been dreaming. I wasn't even asleep yet, and I knew what I felt and touched, not to mention my hair being pulled. Long story short, being married to him, I've experienced a lot of crazy things around me. I was told that his family, the men in particular, were cursed by a female ghost. She follows the men around ever since their great-grandpa's time back in Laos. I have no idea why, but after we got divorced, everything was peaceful again. However, that night will always haunt me to this day. Every night before I go to bed, I always make sure that my hair does not touch the side or top edge of the bed. Interested in sharing your stories? Submit them to HmongChronicles@gmail.com or in the description below. Here is the next story. Thank you. This took place in North Sacramento on October 5th, 2012. It was a late Friday night around the time of 9 p.m. and me and a group of people were all at the park. 3 of the friends, including me, were drinking heavily, while everyone else was just laughing at our stupidity and our jokes. Being drunk and careless we decided to enter this abandoned apartment. I always carry a flashlight whenever I go out late. Since I had the only flashlight, I went in first and we all went together, holding each other's hands or by each other's shirts. I went upstairs and everybody followed. When entering this room, I had this really scary thought and I could feel this evil presence. Anyways, what we saw was this bed that had a compass, some scrolls, a silver watch, and just a ton of paper that was on this small bed. Since I was the only one with a backpack, I told my friend to hold my flashlight while I grabbed everything. As soon as I grabbed everything, one of the friends just had to mention about ghosts and saying how he didn't believe in it, saying that if he ever met a ghost, he'd kill it. Another friend said that this place has been closed down for years and there could be some spirits who still roams freely around here. Bringing up the supernatural made everyone panic. Because we were in a dark place, everyone wanted to back out. Since my friend had my flashlight, I told them to go first and that I'll be the last one behind because they were all scared. As everyone was leaving the room, out of nowhere, I felt this really cold hand touch my shoulder. I turned around and saw this thing that was my height, 5'6". This spirit was my exact height, and it was for sure a girl because of the long hair she had. When I turned around to look at her, she hit me on the forehead with a toilet paper roll that's already been used up. I then fainted, and the next thing I know was that I was on the really small bed, tied up. I couldn't move either because she had some kind of spell on me, but I could talk. I started yelling at her to let me go, but then she turned around and I could actually see her face. There was no blood on her mouth, nor red eyes as I expected, but I saw this really mean look as if she was going to tear me apart. Suddenly I was murmuring in Hmong shaman chantings. I don't know how I did this, but I started to chant to her. She got scared and vanished. A couple of seconds later, my parents and my friends came and found me tied up in that room. They untied me and I told them about what I saw and what it said to me. My parents told me to be quiet and we rushed home. We later called my grandpa, who lives in South Sacramento. When my dad called my grandpa, someone or something knocked on our front door. It wasn't even knocking, it was more of a pounding. They were pounding on our door with all their might. This continued on for 10 minutes, and then it stopped. We all just sat in the living room, waiting for the arrival of my grandpa. My dad told everyone to grab a Hmong knife and told my mom to get out the goat horns and shaman strings. When my grandfather finally arrived, he did his rituals and said that we bothered the ghost that lived among the apartment. She wanted to make things even by following me and disturbing me as well. I mean, you do kind of deserve it. The next morning, we found piles of rocks outside our cemented sidewalks. It seemed as if someone was going to throw these rocks at our house, but they didn't. My parents lectured me and my siblings and told us to never hang out this late, especially at the park and apartment ever again. So my cousin and I were fishing for catfish one night at one of the close-by rivers. The night started off a little bit weird. We started fishing at about 9 p.m. The place we were fishing at was only accessible by animals from both sides of us. There was a creek behind us and everything was basically the woods. We were talking about all kinds of things throughout the night, and then we started getting into discussing life and death. This was when we heard weird noises that were out of the ordinary. They didn't seem to fit the wilderness. It sounded like they were women's voices. We weren't getting any bites, so we decided that we would leave at 11 if we didn't catch anything. As 11 p.m. came closer, we weren't close to leaving, but still not a touch of the bait. At 11, all of a sudden, I heard the loudest growl that shook me. It felt like something on the right of me, and I jumped up as high and quick as I ever had before. I turned to my cousin, who was sitting on my left, and I saw a terrified look on his face. Not wanting to jump to conclusions, I asked him what was wrong. He said, "Did you hear that?" I replied, "What did you hear?" "That crazy growl. It shook my whole body." I looked at him and asked, "Are you sure?" He was very certain, so I told him that I heard it too. After it happened, it went completely quiet. No rustling of the leaves, nothing. Almost like everything just shut up. We drove around the pond a couple of times to see what we might be able to find, but nothing. The two of us decided that whatever it was didn't want us there, so we went back home. The next day, I was telling my other cousin about this, and this is where things got even more weird. When we showed up to the same spot, we could hear the fish jumping. My cousin from yesterday said that we better catch something good tonight, smiling and giggling. I got really excited and started to set up my gear, noticing I left the top piece of my rod inside the car. My cousin already had his line in the water. As I was making my way back to the car, I could hear him yelling, telling me to come back because something was biting like crazy, but he couldn't hook them. I quickly made my way back down, but I saw that he wasn't alone. I saw a little boy just smiling at me while he was playing with my cousin's fishing rod, bending the tip so it looks like a fish is biting. I told him to drop his fishing rod and come up here. As he was walking up, I just sprinted to the car and he did not hesitate to follow behind me. We got into the car and took off, leaving everything there. He asked me what was wrong, and I told him that they were not bites that he was getting, but instead a little boy playing with his fishing pole. To this day, I don't fish at night anymore, and that incident scarred me for life. We lived in an old apartment in Fresno, California, on the street of Huntington. The apartment is probably 30 to 40 years old. I searched it up. I remember one day, my mom told me one of her dreams. She dreamt of an old lady with long gray hair that was wearing Hmong clothes, the ones for the dead. My mom said that she was sleeping on the sofa and suddenly dreaming that the old lady just appeared in the hallway. My mother took a look at her and she started coming closer. As the old lady was getting closer to where my mom was sleeping, my mom noticed that she had a strange walk. It was a walk as if she was limping, but also not limping, tilting but not tilting. Then my mom finally noticed that the old lady's legs were swapped. Her right leg was on the left side instead, and vice versa. My mom was so scared she started to spit at the old lady. The old lady only came closer and closer, but when my mom started to spit a lot at the lady, she just vanished. My mom woke up and was so scared that she woke us all up to stay with her. This is one of my friend's story that I want to share with you all. The story took place in Southern California. One summer day, her little family and some cousins planned a little lake trip. They had a great time. They swam, had barbecue food, and just hung out socializing. The sun was going down and it started getting late, so everyone got ready and packed up everything to come home. But somehow they forgot their daughter's blanket and left it there at the lake, thinking nothing of it. When they got home that night, their daughter was acting strangely. She would stay up and cry all night and get so scared to sleep. She was only 2 years old at this time. Some nights, she would cry as if someone or something was hurting her, and this kept on happening for a couple of days. Finally, they told the in-laws what had been happening, and they did one noon to see what was wrong. When the shaman was done doing his ritual, he told them that the reason why their daughter has been crying a lot was because they left something at the lake. A child pilgrim ghost got a hold of it and followed them home by smelling the scent of the blanket. Since the blanket was their daughter's, that ghost was targeting her. That's why she cries every night, because it comes out and bothers her. The shaman had to do another ritual to force the ghost out of the house and tie a string on the baby's hand. Moral of the story: pick up after yourself when you are at an unknown area.